Hey, Paul, how's it going? It is so good to have you here with us on the Coach Launch podcast today. Welcome.
Thank you, Matthew. I appreciate you having me.
So good. I'm so looking forward to diving into your journey and finding out more about you. You've been doing some really cool stuff, and I'm sure that the listeners today are going to be so interested to hear about what you've got going on. So, without further ado, guys, today on the Coach Launch podcast, we are chatting with Paul Pape. He's a TEDx speaker, an author, and a creative business strategist. He's changing the way creative entrepreneurs succeed with his groundbreaking methodology, Gamify Business. For over 20 years, Paul has demonstrated that talented creatives don't have to be starving artists. With a client list that includes Disney, Universal, Nickelodeon, Paul has successfully bridged the gap between creativity and business. He founded Gamify Business, a revolutionary approach that turns traditional business concept into engaging RPG-style frameworks that creative minds naturally understand. His unique methods are not just transforming individual careers, but are also being recognized at major industry events, proving that you can both be a successful artist and a thriving entrepreneur without sacrificing your creativity. Let's discover how Paul is making a big difference in what he does today. Awesome, Paul. Let's go. Are you ready to go?
Absolutely. Let's do this.
Nice, nice, nice. So, Paul, just so we can give the audience a little bit of a context of what you've been up to, tell me about some of the accomplishments, some of the things you've been doing. I mentioned there that you've been involved with big companies, organizations like Disney, Universal, Nickelodeon. That's pretty cool. So, talk to me about some of the stuff you've been accomplishing.
So I'm colloquially, I can never say that word. I'm known as Santa for nerds. That's actually my business role as Paul Pape Designs. That's my main business. That's what led me to working with companies like Disney and Universal, Nickelodeon, The Tonight Show. And what that means is that I'm the guy they go to when they have a wish and they don't know how to make it happen. And I've built a reputation of just being able to create anything from a studio in Omaha, Nebraska, in the United States. And so from there, I've had the opportunity to work on major movies like the Harry Potter series, as well as creating props for the television. I mean, honestly, I've done so much. It's crazy. I've got stuff in museums. I've got stuff all over the world. I've worked with thousands of people all around, turning their memories into tangible items. That's really what started me off in this business. It was the desire to
Wow.
create something that people wanted that they couldn't get anywhere else. And then about 8 years ago, I was sitting in my studio. It's a lonely existence, a one man show. And I thought, I'd love to talk to more people. My background's from theater design. And so I thought, well, why don't I actually start doing this live in front of people? So I found a platform called Twitch. And on it, I would just sit for about 6 to 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, creating the work that I do as Paul Pape Designs. And from there, I would start talking to other people. So it was kind of like a live show every day for about 6 years. And then what happened is I started seeing that there was a lot of other creatives out there who are curious how I could be successful at this. They're watching me get these high ticket, high dollar jobs that are coming across my desk. And they're like, how does that happen? How do I, as a creative who's, working in my home or just getting out, starting into this business, how do I accomplish that? And so I would tell them, well, there's these steps that you'd have to do, and I'd repeat it over and over again, and eventually that led me off into creating this little beast here, Gamify Business.
Wow, that's so cool. And tell me, let's go back to where you started in your journey, right? Let's go back because I mean, there's a lot of starting points in our lives. But let's choose a specific time when you realized that you could help other people. And what was that transition like for you? What was that experience?
Well, like I said, my origins are in theater, as in theatrical design, and I actually was finishing up my graduate degree, and I was working with a scenic designer who had a lot of shows on Broadway at the time. And for us in the States, that's pretty much top tier for a scenic designer. Like, you're doing that, you're doing well. And so I had asked him, I said, his name was John Arnone. I said, hey, John, what's it like being at the top as I'm just now starting out? And he gave me some of the best advice I'd ever gotten. He said, it sucks. It's hard. I am on the road 48 weeks out of the year. I pay for an apartment I'm never in. If you want to settle down and actually enjoy your life, this is not the career to do. And this is as I'm finishing up my degree. So I was like, well, that would have been great advice 3 years ago when I started this program. But what that did is it opened up my eyes. I thought, well, if that's not going to be the thing that really draws me in, how can I do what I do? So I fell back onto an original love that I have, which is making gifts for people. And I kind of stumbled into that. I was doing it as a hobby at the time, and people would ask me for, hey, can you make this thing for me? Can you make this other thing? And I had a student friend of mine who actually requested something. I don't know if you remember the Nintendo Wii from the early 2000s, but there's these little avatars in there that you can create to look like you. And he asked me if I could make one for him and his girlfriend. And I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. And just another throwaway. Here's a couple $100, make this thing. But what I didn't know is he had actually posted it online to a blog called Super Punch. And this is before there was Facebook, Instagram, and everybody had their own life online.
Oh,
And it took off. And I ended up, I think at the heyday of it, I was making between 20 and 25 pieces a week, totally hand sculpted. And they were large pieces. And I was just cranking them out as a machine, just me. And that's when I realized that it had significance to it, this custom art thing. And then eventually people started asking for things that are outside of that. Well, could you make this? And could you make that? And then I realized, yeah, why not? Why say no to anything? You just kind of do that bend, not break type of situation. So I just kind of went where the business took me. And what I realized along the way is that there's everybody here wants to make a memory tangible. They want this momentous thing in their life that that holds significance to them to be able to be held. They want to see it come to life. And so that helping people, that's how I earned the moniker of Santa for nerds, is that these people would desire something and I could make it happen. I know you have this beautiful background here, but I actually have a wall. It's about 22 feet long over here that is filled with the things that I have actually created throughout my life and basically affected the lives of other people. And what I realize is throughout this is that we all have the same like desires. We want things to be, you know, real. We want and magical, and we want that in our lives. And I was the guy who just happened to have the opportunity and the skill set to be able to make these things happen. And I think that's really that's where the origin of it started. And then when I started talking to others, I saw other creatives, and I'm a big proponent. I hate the starving artist trope. I just think it's one of the worst things. We all love to have things made by creative people, but we don't want to pay them. And so I'm like, no, we should be paid for this. And so I would be talking to other creatives, other individuals, and it occurred to me that they just didn't understand business. We were taught these skills of how to be creative, but we were never taught what to do with it. And that's where it kind of clicked for me that why don't I help them as well? Since I've been spending all this time helping all of them individually attain this thing that they wanted, why don't I instead instill in them the skill set to make their lives easier and have fun along the way?
good. I love that. And so where do you think that came from, the starving artist? I don't think that is the reality, because here's my perspective, right? Anyone in business is a creative.
Yep.
Like anyone literally, like, and you can define it in different ways, but when you're running a business, you've got to constantly be creative. And so creativity is everywhere. It's an interesting analogy, that like the context that you said, like the starving artist. I think if you take on that identity, it's not a good identity to be taken on.
Not at all. And I think where honestly where it happened, Industrial Revolution. That's where it happened. But we don't want to go all the way back to
Okay.
there. But
Yeah.
but if we jump to the current version of it is Walmart, Amazon. That's
Yeah.
actually what is affecting us the most. And that's actually one of the key pivots that I have when I'm talking to creatives. We can't look at ourselves as offering something that can be bought at an Amazon price. That's not sustainable for any kind of livelihood. We have to rethink how we approach that. And the way that I say it is what you create are magic items. This is something that you've put your expertise into. It's not an everyday object. It's not something that's mundane that you can buy en masse. What you're creating is unique and special, and you're putting the magic into it, and the price has to reflect that. And a lot of creatives don't realize that they have to charge for that specialty. They just think if I earn the materials cost back and a little something extra, I'm good. But they forget about labor, education, time, all of that put into it.
No, that's good. It's an important context that we're talking about. For me, it's the same thing, and you highlighted something very important because I deal with a lot of people in the space in the high ticket space, and so many people have the fear of charging what they're worth. Now, there is obviously competition and there is obviously market shifts and changes, but for the most part, anybody could charge what they're really worth. And I think people get this imposter syndrome or this fear of what other people will think, and it limits them from putting themselves out there at a higher perceived value. And it's something that interests me so much, exactly how you just said, right? You could create something unique and you could put something very unique and different out into the marketplace, but then you've still got to believe that it's worth that extra what you're charging for it, right? What are your thoughts about that?
It's absolutely, absolutely true. As a matter of fact, I was dealing with a potential client today. He asked me what something cost. I gave him the price. He goes, "Well, what's the lowest you could do?" And I said, "The price that I gave you." And he's like, "But it's art. I should be able to negotiate this." I said, "I don't come into your work and tell you, I don't want to pay you your boss is not going to pay you this much this week because they don't think you're valuable enough for it." It's the same thing when you're talking to me. This is my job, and it's not like we pull the numbers out of a box. We do like pricing for me. I also have a mathematical equation that I share with everybody who works with me, that this is how we figure out what to charge. And that is an important thing. And when you put that math in front of somebody else, you're like, this is what it costs. And this is why, and that's why it's as expensive as it is, because it's not just this thing that I've just whipped up. It's the years of experience that go into being able
Yes,
to make that thing. And there
of
is
course.
value in that.
Oh, you're speaking my language. I love that. And it makes so much sense because, when you think about it and all of us that are charging or want to charge our value, it's the thing is we've gone through these hard knocks. We've lived a life. We've built in our world around learning a skill, learning how to be unique and do something at a level that's, other people couldn't possibly do because we've done this special thing and all this experience, the learnings that we've had, the mistakes that we've made, the troubles that we've gone through, like all of the world of energy to get to this point. And if you were to calculate it, it could be millions of dollars of lost, trial and error and whatever to get to this place. And so I love that context, right? Knowing your value is super important. How do you stick with, how would you, like, this is very interesting because I love this, right? Goes into the psychology and everything. You have this work of art or creative piece and you've set a bar, right? You've set a price point. So what does that look like in terms of making the sale happen?
I'm going to go back a little bit to when I was first making those me's that I was talking about. And when I was
Yeah,
selling those initial pieces, I was selling them for $25 a piece,
yeah,
way underpriced. And what I realized was that everybody would buy them, but then I found that the customers devalued the object because it wasn't worth a lot. I
yeah.
noticed that my volume increased when I increased my price, and my clientele became nicer the higher my pricing went, because now they're feeling a little bit of pain when they're paying, which then it holds value. It's similar when we're creating objects, like the tangible weight of something. If something weighs more in our hands, we assume it has more value. And it's the same thing with pricing. If I price something high enough, if you dare to ask for it, if you have to ask the price, you can't afford it. We've all heard that expression. It's the same
Eh,
thing. It's there, that value is there. And so when I do price my stuff, and let me tell you, my stuff is not cheap anymore. It's not $25 anymore. But when I talk to clients about that, or potential clients, customers, I say, this is the pricing behind it. And of course, your stomach twists and turns when you're saying those numbers out loud, because imposter syndrome never goes away. But what happens is you dull it. And I'd like to dull it with facts and figures. So math is always going to be your friend when it comes to figuring it out. The hardest thing to quantify is your hourly rate. Like it, because we're so used to, just as a creative, just throwing ourselves into it, as an entrepreneur, as a business person, a 16, 18-hour day when you're starting out, even sometimes when you're 5, 10 years into it, is not unheard of. But what is that time actually worth? What is your time worth? And time, honestly, is the most valuable commodity that we have. And so I'm one of those people that when I'm hired by television or movies, I'm fast. I'm very fast. but my hourly rate is astronomical. But that speed is, they say, well, how long does it take to make this? It's like 6 hours, but it's actually 40 years plus 6 hours. You just don't have to wait the
Yeah.
40 years because that's what it took me to learn how to do it in 6 hours. But that's
6
what you don't
hours.
pay
Yeah.
for. So,
Yeah. I love that. That's such an interesting conversation that we're diving into here. The value that we have as entrepreneurs is fundamentally like a lady was talking to me the other day, one of my clients, and she was asking me, how do you charge so much what you're serving? And she said she wants to be able to do the same thing, and she has this offer that she's charging $2,000 for. And I said, for the amount of service and delivery that you're doing on that, you're undercharging yourself because, as you were just mentioning, there's expenses, there's time, there's all the experience and everything that you put into it to save that person a lot of time and give them this huge value. And she said, well, how do I sell it for $10,000? And this was my answer. And I think it's actually very relevant because I've learned the same lesson. Same lips, $2,000, same lips, $10,000. Say the price. And when you establish your price and you believe that you're worth that, some people might say no, but some people are going to say yes because you're providing huge value. How good is that, right?
it's absolutely true. And for anybody who doubts the person who's not willing to pay that $10,000, they're not your client. That's not a client you want to have because already they are devaluing your work. When the moment they start to negotiate your price, walk away. Because if they truly honestly honor what you do and value what you give them, what you present, and what you have to offer, the pricing isn't the question. What they're questioning is your value and your expertise. You're having the confidence to say it, honestly, is the best cement that you can ever do in a deal, is to be able to say it with a straight face without a quiver in your voice. I have a $20,000 offer. We were talking about that earlier. It's a $20,000 offer for experience, but if I can come in and in 4 months change the trajectory of your business, it's worth every bit of that $20,000.
That's so true. That's absolutely true. So tell me, you're helping people in the creative space. Everything that you speak is very business related across the board. It makes sense. You've obviously got yourself a very unique and tangible niche, which is amazing. What are some of the challenges that you've faced along the journey to get to where you are right now? Let's talk about some of that.
Well, I mean, let me tell you, I wrote 2 books about them and they are just rife with failure. Failure to me is something that you're always going to encounter. And I've done everything from giving away the milk before they buy the cow. That's my biggest one. I have a tendency to do that a lot. I want to help people, and so I have a hard time shutting up until they give me the check. That's probably one of the biggest errors that I make because I don't ever want to be seen as somebody who's like gatekeeping the information or it's the money is what's holding me back. But that is valuable information. And if I give it away for free, it's not worth anything and they won't follow the advice. So that's definitely one of the ones that I've stumbled upon and over many times. The other one is undervaluing my own time, and not just in pricing, but undervaluing how I divvy up my duties as an entrepreneur. I'm a solopreneur. I own my own business, but I do not work alone. I do the majority of my work myself, but I know that I have shortcomings, things that I don't like to do, things that I don't do very well. And I have found that it is better to hire out that aspect of it so that I'm not wasting my most precious commodity, which is my time, and allow somebody who does find joy or compensation in that aspect of the business. And so I often fail because I think, no, I should just do it. I don't want to spend that little bit of money because I can do it. I know I can do it. And you just find yourself slogging through this area of your business, which is definitely not of interest, and it's a waste of your time. Find somebody else to help you do it. So there's
Good.
definitely
I
there's
love
two
it.
good examples.
Yeah, yeah, those are so good. And how do you overcome these challenges? Tell me, what have you been doing to get over these things?
Here's a funny thing. So I wrote this book. It's called The Creative Player's Handbook to Business, and it basically walks you through the creative aspect of business. Now, the reason that I bring this up is because I was writing it and I had a writing coach helping me go through it as we were presenting it. And when we got done with the book, she asked me, "Have you ever done your own book? Have you followed your own advice?" And I said, "Why should I? I wrote it. I know it. I'm impervious." She's like, "I want to challenge you. Take a week and do your own book." And I did. And I realized within it, by going through following my own instruction, not knowing it because I wrote it, but actually doing the job, I found I had shortcomings that were like killing my business. It was killing momentum. It was killing my drive. It was doing all of that. So how did I get over it? Is recognizing, that's the first one, is recognizing that you do have shortcomings. But that's not a bad thing because we are human. We have facets. And so we're not perfect on every level. And then it's admitting that I have these shortcomings and seeking the help I need to get past it. It's hiring a VA to do the endless search for new clientele. It's finding a good advertising company that is understands who you are. And it's so that's one of the ways that I've gotten through it, is actually like recognizing my own shortcomings. But it took a lot of introspection to do that. So that's one aspect of getting over it. The other one is I've had to eat crow a lot. I think that's it's a big one with it, especially when you're pricing. I've underpriced. I've because I thought, well, I'm gonna not get this job if I price it too high, so I underbid it, and then I end up having to, like I say, eat crow. You're like, well, I just lost. I might as well have been paying this company for the opportunity. That's how little money I'm making on this. And so it's those moments of failure. So now it is being confident in the pricing that I'm offering, and understanding my true value. I mean, it's honestly, when you boil it down to it, it's all about introspection and understanding who you are as a business and as an individual and what your value is in that.
I love that. And there's a very good point you make. Knowing your value is one of the, I mean, we could talk about that for so many hours, just understanding the value, right? There's so much psychology in that. There's so much depth. I speak with so many coaches and consultants, experts, speakers, and that's one of the number one things that so many people do. And eating the crow, I've never heard that before, but that's an interesting saying. I might steal that from you. That's a really good, and that happens. I remember my very first sale I ever did. I'd gone into real estate coaching. That was my first business, and I'd got this couple on the call, and they, they wanted to speak to me. They wanted me to help them with this thing that I'd developed in real estate. And my coach at the time was like, $10,000. That's how much you should sell this for because of all the effort. Anyway, they were a lovely couple on the phone. We spoke for a while, and then they asked me how much, and I said, $2,500.
Oh,
Which was, number one, it was my first big sale. That was okay, celebration for that. But on the other side, it was, I had to go and deliver this. Now, what's interesting is I made them $130,000 within the first year of them doing what I showed them, and much more after that. And I charged them $2,500. Bitter pill to swallow. I ate the
that's the
crow.
crow you were
Love
eating
that.
right there.
That's the crow. And it taught me a very valuable lesson that I needed to, and I learned very quickly from that because that hurt. To straight jump into today, we sell products, offers all the way from $100,000. We even have a $1.6 million offer. And those now, it's fundamentally built our whole business, like that, understanding that the value is so important. But you can't just say value, right? You can't just say, I'm going to charge X. You have to also deliver on that, right?
Yep.
What's your perspective on that?
Absolutely. It's putting your money where your mouth is. You can offer a high ticket, and trust me, I've had enough coaches to know that sometimes they talk a really big game, but the results aren't there, and it embitters people to know that. And if you think for a moment that you can get away with that and it won't ripple out around you, you're wrong, because it doesn't matter what industry you work in. When somebody feels embittered, it travels, that news goes around. And as humans, as a species, we actually cling to the negative more than we ever cling to the positive, which is why when you're looking at reviews, nobody ever, when's the last time you put a review in for something that you loved versus the thing that you hated? It's like, I don't like this thing, so I'm going to leave a negative review. And it's the same thing. People are exactly the same way. If you cannot back up what you're pitching, what you're selling, then it's going to fall and you will crash and burn. You may get away with it a time or two, but eventually that trust that you've built is going to vanish. And I think especially in the consulting business and coaching business, your reputation is 90% of what you're selling. And if somebody hears, well, he's not actually, what he presents, it sounds really good, but it doesn't really work, I wouldn't work again. You've got to back up what you're talking about. And so it's absolutely important.
Good. I love that. What are some of the key messages you're passionate about sharing about your work?
One, business should be fun. I'm sorry, if you're fun in your business, get out of that business. Find something you're passionate about because we spend 5 out of 7 days of the week doing work. And if you're not loving it, find something else. I understand that there's necessity in work and we have to earn a paycheck, but find something that is adjacent to what you love to be able to do that. That's one of the things that I say. The other one is know who you are. Know who you are. And it's a really difficult thing for people to understand. Introspection is very hard. Now, 20 years ago, even harder. We've gotten to a point now where we're actually talking about feelings and who we are and having like owning our own personality, knowing who we are, but being honest with ourselves in that assessment. And let me tell you, I've yet to meet an entrepreneur who ever makes mistakes. Okay. So when I'm talking to them, they're like, oh no, everything I do is right. And it's like, it's not, but you
Yeah.
don't want to admit that because when you admit that failure, you feel like you've put a crack in your foundation. But the reality is understanding who you are on a fundamental level, your strengths and weaknesses, it allows you the opportunity to find people to help shore you up in where you're deficient and to help you shore them up so that we create a better, well-rounded business. So that would be the second one. So have fun, know who you are, and then for me and creatives, honestly, it's quit selling your stuff. Sell who you are. Sell your story. That's the biggest one because I worked with an actuary who created some beautiful software to help construction people maintain their bills and balances so they understood what was going on. The thing is, she was trying to get seed money to help expand it throughout the country. And so I was like, well, let me see your pitch deck. And her pitch deck was just numbers, 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 numbers. And I'm like, when we met, you told me this beautiful story about how you worked with your mom and you helped her with her construction company. And there was all of this, and you were helping this mom and pop thing run more efficiently. And if you would go with your pitch deck, have your numbers there, but pull on the heartstrings, you are going to secure way more money. And that's exactly what she did. She went in there and she told that story first, backed it up with the numbers. The seed money came pouring in. And that's the key to it because as humans, we didn't sit around the campfire and talk about numbers. We sat around the campfire and told stories. And stories is what sells. So that's the third piece is come from an emotional point of view. Quit trying to sell your stuff. Try to sell the story that goes behind it.
I love that. Those are really good points and a very empowering message. So I want to just dive back into something that you said, and maybe you can have something to say about this, but we'll have the discussion. So I love a lot of people say find something you're passionate about, and it's I don't know if you've ever read the book. What is it called? Become so good they just can't ignore you. And when I look at or I understand your journey, right? It's the craftsman's idea. You became really good at something, like super good at something, and the passion blossomed from that. I would imagine that you really enjoy what you do, right? I
Yeah.
love that. So and this is the thing, like passion is important, right? You need to get out of bed every day going, geez, I want to do this thing because otherwise it knocks you, right? And the reason why I'm going back on this is because for me, it was like when I started getting into marketing and learning how to run business, everyone told me to follow your passion, follow your passion. And personally, I can say, thank goodness I didn't. Now, just bear with me.
Okay.
I'm going to get into it because my passion would have been going down sports or doing something that wouldn't have got me to the place I was now. What I did do though was start learning the game of business and learning how to do design and learning how to do marketing and learning how to tell stories. And after a while, I became so good at this thing that I enjoyed doing more of it. And the passion evolved out of that, doing this thing consistently and becoming so good that when people came and spoke to me, they would be like, oh, this is so cool. You're doing this thing. Oh, I love that. I just wanted to bring that into context. What are your thoughts about that? What do you think about that? Because it's a different spin, right? It's a different look on the whole idea of passion.
It's not because you said it. You said it. You said that you followed your passion in a different way. You said you originally your passion would have been to follow sports, but instead you learned the game of business. And now it became the game. You're still doing sports. You're just doing a different, you're just not in a stadium. You're not on a pitch. You are literally doing the game of business. So you did follow your passion. It just took an abstract route. And that's 100% what we were talking earlier. You bend, don't break. You took a different direction, but then you found the passion in it, but really you were just following the game. And so
Wow.
I agree, but I disagree. So you did do it exactly what you said, but it's that reflection point that you're doing. You're like, I didn't pursue that original idea. I was originally going to be a set designer for theater and film. I didn't end up doing that.
Nice. Yeah.
I followed a different path. I ended up in the same destination. And I think you did too. You love the game. You love this game that you're doing now. And you're such an expert at it that now people, but I mean honestly, if you would have pursued sports, how long would that have been before you bounced out of that and gone into business? It's the same thing with most sports people. They all, that's why they all have business degrees, because they take their momentum that they have from sports and the drive that they had for that, and they position themselves in a point of power and expertise in business, and then it becomes the new game.
Good. I love that. You've said game multiple times. I love the game of business. So good plugging there. All right. So let's talk a little bit about your process. What is gamify business? What does that even mean? Like, let's dive
It's
into this.
so gamifying your business means taking the idea of running and operating a business, regardless of what your output is, your product, and turning it into something that is more enjoyable. You hit the nail on the head earlier when you said, what is the thing that drives me? What is the passion that gets me out of bed? A lot of people want to be rich and they want to be famous. But the problem is we don't always start with that. And sometimes it's fleeting. There's going to be moments in your life you have neither, but you still got to keep pushing forward. So how do we do that? You have to have a passion behind it. You have to enjoy what you're doing. So when we gamify your business, we're taking aspects of business that are challenging, mundane, boring, and we're turning them into something that is more of an adventure. I love to say business is an adventure. Don't be the NPC, which is the non-playable character. You want to be the hero of your own adventure. And so with Gamify Business, what we do is we position you as the hero. And you can be a hero, a solo adventure, or you can be part of a team. It doesn't matter, but you are running your own adventure. And so when we gamify it, we actually start with the most basic thing, which is a character sheet. And we take you and we turn you into a character in your own life. This isn't a make-believe world that we're creating. We're not rolling dice to figure out what stats you have. We actually look at every person, and again, it's an introspection, but we look at you and then we turn you into a character. Now, the reason there's a psychology that works with this is, like I mentioned earlier, entrepreneurs do not like to mention their weaknesses. We have stalwart in that. What we can do though is when we're creating a character, they have a disassociation. It's minor, it's still you, but you can say, I don't have this weakness because I'm impervious, but my character is a little bit soft on marketing skills. But that character is still you. And understanding all of that. And so when we talk about stats on a sliding scale. We say things like, are you a rigid thinker or are you a free thinker? Do you like things to be by the book or do you like things to be loosey-goosey? And you find yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 on either direction. So then what we do from there is once we've got your completed character sheet, you know who you are and what your business is. And how we get to that is we say, what are you passionate about? Which is what we were talking about earlier. But then the key to figuring out what your business should be is the second question, which is what do you do with your business or your passion that nobody else does? If you can answer that question, you have the seed to your business. And now you have the character and the seed. And then what we do is we go looking for group. And this is even if you're a solo adventurer versus a group player, we go looking for group. And this is why you need to know where your stats are, where you fall in that line.
What do you mean by group? Just so I understand, what is
So
the
group is
delineation?
other people that are going to help you out with your business, whether you've got a team that works with you, you've got employees around you, or you
Gotcha.
are a solopreneur and you have to find outside companies to help you to round it out. So
Gotcha.
the biggest mistake that I find, especially with creative people, is they like to surround themselves with people that are like-minded. That's great when you want friends. It's horrible when you're running a business, because if in gaming terms is you don't want to go into a fight with 5 warriors because you're going to wipe, which means you're going to fail. It's the same thing in business. If all of you think the exact same way, you're not going to be successful. You need to have a support network that is going to balance you out. So when we look for group, when we look for people who are going to support you, you want to make sure that they do not align with your stats, but that they help to anywhere that you're deficient, they have that ability, so that raises you up. And anywhere that they're deficient, you have that ability. Now, obviously, with two people, it's going to be very difficult. That's why we surround ourselves with typically 5 to 10 people or smaller businesses to help us with that, because each one of them is going to help to boost you up. The key to it, though, is especially if you're the owner of the business or the main entrepreneur, the main spearhead of the company, is that you have to be the one in charge, and you have to really know who you are, because all the people that you surround in your group, all the people in your group are going to have to lift up in the areas that you're deficient. But if you can't
Yeah,
admit to what that is, you're going to have a hell of a time finding those people. And so,
gotcha.
so that, so once we do that, so that's the game. So that's how we've now created our group. We've got our character sheets. We've got
So
our,
can I just dive into this a little bit because I want to
yeah,
just
please.
understand a few parts of this. So
Absolutely.
the character component of it, and having introspection, it's like you're creating your character. Would that be like a superhero character, or would it just, how would you define these characters? Like if I was to become a character, how would you make that work for me?
Well, your character is you, Matthew. It'd be Matthew White, the character, but what we're doing is we're making you think of yourself as the business. So it would be Matthew, the entrepreneur, Matthew, the business owner, and your skill set is what like your class would be. So
Would
instead of
there
being a
would there
warrior or a
be
wizard,
all right, so okay, so it's right, it's in placing an identity on over you that you can have an aspiration for being the person, right? Is that kind of what it is?
inspiration and reflection. The
Reflection.
key to
That's the
the key to it
introspection.
is
That's the introspection that you're talking about, right?
right. So when we're looking at it, we're asking you questions that you probably have not asked yourself. And it's, like, why are you doing this? Like legitimately, it's not just because it's fun, but like, why are you getting
Mm,
into this particular type of business? Why do you want to lead? If you are the leader, what is your strength as a leader?
mm.
Are you a quiet person, or are you introvert or an extrovert? You need to know these things to run a business. If you're an introvert but you've got really good ideas, I would say Steve Jobs, pretty much an introvert. Guy was brilliant, but he went on stages because he had to. But he would rather be in his office or in his home being brilliant, walk through, talk to everybody and say, "This is what I want you to do." He's not the guy who's out loud and proud. That's not his job. So he surrounded himself with people who were. Wozniak, very much an outgoing person. And so they paired up really nicely because they balanced themselves out. And so when they launched Apple, that's what they did. So you need to understand yourself. When we're doing, you're looking for your ideal client, you create that, avatar, the client avatar. This is the person that I'm thinking I'm trying to sell to. But if you don't know who you are, how are you going to know who your ideal client is?
Oh,
But we don't ever
yeah.
take the time to look into that. And so that's what the character sheet does.
Wow. There's a lot of depth in that. I love that. From like just me being introspective right now, I think that is a huge missing gap, right? If you don't know yourself, how are you going to know your clients? Um, and how are you going to connect with your clients? So good. I love that. So tell me, when you're creating characters for your start, so you talked about creating this group, which means your team, right? You're building a
Correct.
team. What is some of the key components that you would suggest people are looking out for? Because obviously, and I could imagine that the team is also a character-based environment, right? Because you've got this gamification thing going on. Now, how would that play out? Like, how do you know you're finding the right team or building the right group around you?
This is my favorite part of doing these in workshop form is everybody does a character sheet. Everybody has to. And we have to do the introspection. But the thing of it is no one gets to see it but you. At the end, you have a summation sheet which kind of shows it's your name, your stats, and your basic identity of like how you approach business. But the really deep questions are reserved for you. That's your introspection. It's not something we're going to put on display. Everybody has to complete these when I'm doing the workshop. And then what we do is we break off and we say we're looking for group. In gaming, this is why this looks like a tavern, because in role-playing games, the tavern is where you meet your group. And so I always play the tavern master, the tavern keep. That's my job. And so when we go to look for group, that's the first thing they can say is, "Oh, I'm very much a linear thinker. I'm looking for somebody who's not a linear thinker." And so it gives you an opportunity to sit and talk to people. And you would be surprised the amount of people that are not doing the job that they should be doing, but they just kind of, that was the job that they fell into, or they thought that's where they needed to be. But upon the introspection, they're like, you'd really be better over here. And they're like, I think I might. And so it opens those lines of communication, and now we know who we are, and now we know what we're looking for, because we've got literally a visual that says, I've got this curve, I'm looking for the opposite. I'm looking for people who are really going to boost me up in this area. Are you that person? Do you have that skill set? Yes, I do. Well, come join my group. And this is the role that you're going to occupy within that business.
Wow, that's so powerful. I love that. Finding and understanding where your weaknesses are and identifying them as a part of the business. So whether you're starting out or if you've been running business for a long time, if you don't know those, if you're not really identifying those weaknesses, it leaves huge holes and gaps in your business. And what I would imagine is that overwhelm, that procrastination, or that inability to kind of make quick decisions, kind of it stumps you, right? That's how I would imagine it. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes. And a lot of times when you're, especially as an entrepreneur, or as the guy who, or the guy or the woman who's in charge of the business, they feel that they have to make every decision, that it has to go through them. And it's relinquishing any of that power. When we do the introspection, we do the character sheet, and then we talk to people and we're honest with ourselves, and we're saying, this is what I'm looking for. And it's fun, because at this point, it's still not us. Remember, we're separated a little bit. This is my character is looking for this extra person, even though the character is you. When we're going through this, it becomes more fun. And so it's the challenge, it's the gaming aspect of this. And it's the carrot and the sticks type situation. But what I've noticed is that with people who are in charge and refuse to relinquish any power, they can't find a group, because no one wants to. No, there's like, well,
Yeah.
there's no deficiency that you have that I can help you with. So why would I team up with you? And I'm sorry, you cannot do this by yourself. This, especially
Wow.
business, you have to have a support team.
I love that. I love that so much. And it's a big lesson for a lot of people. And I can 100% relate because I have clients that do the same thing. They want to do everything themselves. And when you do try and do everything yourself, guess what? You can't do anything very well, right?
Right.
And so that's really, really awesome. So what what is some, tell me some more, like you had, so there was a couple of things. I think I kind of cut you off and you were continuing about your method. Talk to me more about what you're doing. Because you'll go
But
from character to group. Yep.
so once we've got the group, now we actually start to go on the adventure. And this is the part that, and I love this aspect of my life, because my entire career has been based on customization. I don't have a formula that is one size fits all. I have one
Mm.
size fits one. And so when I go to do this next part here is completely customized. And that's the benefit of being the game master and having that versatility. But now what we do is we start to look at the challenges of your individual business. This is the campaign. This is the actual game. And what we do is we talk, we sit and we have a conversation. Like, what are the things that you feel are working in your business? What are the things that you feel are not working? Where do you find the pitfalls? Where's your dragon? Where are the hordes of monster that you need to slay? Where is the piles of gold that you need to attain? These ideas have to come from the group that I'm speaking with. When they give me that information, then what we do is we create a literal game mechanic into this. We go on a campaign. We're going to do the adventure of getting the dragon's hoard. If this is what I would do if somebody needs to do a lot of fundraising or getting seed money. We're going after the dragon's hoard. How do we do this? Well, you have to prep for this. Well, how do I prep for it? You have to have the right armor and weapons and skill sets to be able to go into this den of dragons and convince them to give you their hoard of money. And so we talk through this, and everyone has their strengths, and those strengths are what I rely on. So I'll say to one person, okay, so you're the marketing advertising person in this group. What is the thing that you're going to bring to this that will appease the dragon? When the dragon says halt, who goes there? What are you going to, why are you here? That's the person who's going to step up and say, hey, I've got the razzle dazzle that's going to get you a little bit further. It's these aspects of it, they change every single time I do it, because everybody's needs are going to be different depending on their business. Now, obviously, I have a monster manual inside the back of this book, which is basically tropes of issues that we run into, the same monsters over and over again. My favorite is the scope creep monster, and I'm sure we've all been there. It's that one who hires you for a specific a thing. You've signed the contract, the money's been set in stone, and then they're like, well, what if we did this? Or oh, can you just add a little bit of, if we just had this, and they slowly start to creep, and then your money starts to slowly go down and their needs slowly start coming up, and eventually you're being slaughtered by this monster that just crept up on you slowly. So we talk about that
Wow.
as a monster, but also how to deal with that monster. And so
Yeah.
it's things like that.
No.
And with the gaming aspect of this, a big proponent of gaming, component, not proponent, big component of gaming is the reward system. We as
Wow.
humans love a
Yeah.
dopamine kick. That's why we're on our phones all the time. That's why we game. And what we want to do is we want to accomplish a short-term goal and get a reward for it. That reward is the dopamine hit that makes us want to continue to do more tasks and to get more rewards. Harder tasks should garner greater rewards. You mentioned earlier you had gotten it was $150,000 that your client earned, but you only charged $2,500. Now,
Yeah.
if the reward there was a percentage of that reward, of that what they earned, kicking back on you, are you going to work harder for that? Heck yeah, you're going to work harder for that. That's the
Yeah.
reward. And it doesn't always have to be a monetary thing either. Sometimes it's a good friend of mine, his reward is often he gets to take a business trip. He gets to go to a conference, but he gets to get away, but he's being paid to go to a conference and enjoy himself and to learn and expand. That's a carrot. That's a reward. That's a dopamine kick. But how does he earn that? Well, he's got to do a specific amount of tasks. It's just like in a game. Go collect 20 apples, bring them back to me, and I'll give you this better shield. It's the exact same thing. And we can train ourselves in business to earn that. What I found with a lot of larger corporations is that they don't want to give the reward. And so the desire, the drive to complete the quest diminishes. And so we have to continue to incentivize people to want to do this, and not just hey, we're going to have a pizza party, because that's not an incentive. It's not an incentive that's going to be enough to get you there, So it has to be something
Yeah.
of substance. So I
Wow. I
worked with
love
a
that.
I worked with a guy, and he came in, and they wanted to expand the business just a little bit. He came in as the technology guy. This is an old school carpentry company. He came in with LEDs and all of these new ideas, and the business grew by $5 million. They gave him a 1% raise. I said, how does that make you feel? He goes, like, I wasted my time. And you don't want that in your
Wow.
employees, right? Like,
Yeah.
they should have brought him on as partner. He literally changed the trajectory of their business,
Mm.
and the thanks that he got was 1%.
What's interesting about that is that knowledge is power, right? And so if he had known before to set that and establish that gaming from his perspective and put that into place and say, I will do this for you, but I want this from you, and create that expectation, it would have been a different outcome. Versus a lot of people go into this from a place of scarcity, and so with that scarcity mindset, they get themselves into that hole of not getting what they're worth, right, for that thing. I love it. I want to dive into a few things here because, well, so much things I've gathered from you. One of the key aspects of this gaming component is the motivation, right? Because motivation drives industry, it drives business, it drives wealth and success. And I love that you brought in that dopamine context and how you're gamifying this thing. And I would actually love to sit and actually find out how this all works, because it sounds so interesting. Because for me, in business, motivation is one of the key aspects of being able to do things. Whether you're passionate about something or whether you're not, like, you need to be motivated to do certain things. And having the ability or the metrics or a tool to understand how to create a gamification out of things, like, that's a game changer. Like, that is so huge. And I think that is so powerful. Talk to me about some of the stuff that you might do to help drive that motivation or that thing. I know you highlighted a few things, but give me some examples of how this would work for some businesses.
So this is a great example that I'm going to give you. We've all, at some point or another, had a job in which we had to watch a training video, correct? We've done
Mhm.
it the way it's always been done. We're going to sit down and do it. What we don't understand is that the reason that that was became the training for it is because somebody had figured out how to do the job really, really well, and they were very efficient at it. And so the higher ups decided, hey, we would love to reward you by making you the gold standard of how this job is done. The problem is nobody is going to be that person because it's that person's life that has gotten them to that point that they can make those decisions. So one of the best rewards that I've found when doing this is to scrap the training videos altogether. Understand the result. And then there's metrics there's parameters that you've got to work within. Imagine it as like you're going through a maze. There's many paths that you can take, but you can't fly above it and you can't dig below it and you can't go straight through the walls. We have to stay within the parameters of the game, but there's many different ways to get to the exit. It's the same thing with training people. Train them to understand the result and the parameters that go around it. We can only spend this much time. We can only spend this much money. How you get there is up to you, as long as it's done well and we get the result that we're after. And what that does is it gives the employee ownership. And there's one of the biggest things that's lacking in business when you have people who work underneath somebody is that we don't give them ownership of their job. We tell them, this is the way you're going to do it and you're going to fit in this box. And what I find is that those people do the job how they would normally do it, and then they lie and cheat their way around the rest of the time that they're there so that they can get away with it. And that becomes their new game. So their new game is not helping you, it's wasting your effort, your time, your money when they could be propelling your business forward if you just gave them a little bit of ownership of their job.
It's a different bit of perspective, right? Giving that change. Like you highlighted a few things here that I think a lot of business owners or business, especially when you get into corporate, they they devalue the ability to give, right? The giving part is really hard. And
It's
I'm pretty sure that if you were to do some research on that dynamic that you've just talked about, how much faster business would grow if that became a staple in business, and especially as businesses grow, right?
there
Like
was
I
a great
would
example of
imagine
that
you.
during the pandemic. There was a great example of this. Essential workers were still having to work, but they couldn't find enough people to do those jobs because those jobs weren't paying enough. But there were some high-end companies that were paying a actual livable wage, and the owners were taking the hit because they weren't doing as much volume or whatever. So they took less of a paycheck to make sure that their employees were paid a livable wage, and they had next to no turnover. Whereas places like fast food companies and healthcare workers were having high turnover rates because they were doing high stress jobs during the pandemic, but not being compensated for it. And so that is it's a real world example of that happening.
That's crazy. And there you go. There you go. So I loved all this stuff. We're talking about so many things here. Um, Tell me, what are some of the mistakes or limiting beliefs that you see in your industry that kind of stand out for you?
The big one is that work is negotiable. Like cost, it comes back to value. Your value is negotiable. It's not. Like your value is not negotiable. I cannot walk into the to pay my bills and say, well, this month I'm only going to pay you a third of it because that's what I feel I should pay. We should also, as owners, especially of those who are starting out, understand that our value is concrete. And we should stick to that. That's don't let people negotiate with you. That's one of the biggest mistakes that I've run into or seen. Um, Another one would be understand your contracts. When you're working with other people, contracts are a huge thing. And I notice with a lot of uh, creatives, especially, we get starstruck when working with companies like Disney or Universal. They're like, oh, you get the opportunity to work with these mega large companies. So just sign away right here and we're good to go. And a lot of people don't read their contracts, or if they do read them, they don't understand them. And the great thing is we've got AI now that you can literally upload your contract and say, explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old. And it will do exactly that so that you understand everything that you're signing into. And if it doesn't seem right, question it. Because I've never received a contract from another company that had my best interest in mind. Like, never once. It's always their best interest. And so sometimes you've got to protect yourself. And so that's another one there. So knowing your value, being able to read your contracts and understand them is another one. And then the third one would be value the people who help you out. Don't devalue them. If you can find a VA for $4 or you can find one for $10, pay the $10 one if what they're bringing to the job is worth that much. It I was talking to a person and they're like, no, I don't want to pay my VA because they're in some other country and I don't care. I'm just going to pay them the least amount that I can. But then having them walk through their process with me, they're like, oh, that's wrong and this is wrong. Oh, I can't do this. Oh, I've got to talk to my VA about that. I'm like, well, you just got what you paid for. So, don't devalue the people who help you out. Also, if you value them as an equal or as just, if you value them enough for what they're presenting or giving to you as a business, they will keep coming back. They will want to work for you. And it's not, we all have the go away bid. I'm sure you do as well, that here's the job I don't want to take because you're either a hard customer or it's I don't have the time, and you throw out an astronomical number, and then every once in a
Yeah.
while somebody will bite on that one and you're like, well, I didn't want to do this, but I'm going to do it anyways because the zeros talk. It's the same thing for
Yeah.
for the people who assist you. That makes a difference. If you're in the weeds and you need someone to bail you out, you don't just wave a couple of pennies at them. You need to value them for what they're actually bringing to the game. But you won't understand what that value is if you don't know yourself, which goes back to the sheet, to that introspection. If you don't know who you are and what you bring to it, what your shortcomings are, what your strengths are, then you're not going to understand the value that other people bring.
There's so much we could talk about. I love talking about business. I could talk about this all day, every day. Fortunately, we're running out of time. But just before we go, tell me, how can people get hold of you? What is the best way for them to learn about you? Because you're doing an incredible, like what you're doing here just sounds so amazing. I'm super intrigued. And I think that there are so many people out there that could get huge value from what you're doing. So how can people get hold of you? Let me know, and we'll put some of the links in the show notes.
So you can find me at gamifybusiness.com. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me. If you go to gamifybusiness.com/podcast, just the word podcast, you can actually download the first 2 chapters of my book for free to understand what it is that I do and if it works for you. That's the best way to get a hold of me.
Wow. Awesome. We will put that link in the show notes, guys. And, Paul, it's been an absolute honor and privilege hanging out with you. I think what you're doing is super cool, super interesting. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Matthew. Appreciate it.
Amazing.